Today, I have the honour of speaking with Jane Hardwicke Collings.
We live in a culture that's fixated on youth and beauty and 24/7 availability and instant gratification and growth. Growth.
A teacher, midwife, and woman's wisdom keeper whose work has profoundly reshaped how thousands of women understand their bodies, their cycles, and their seasons.
All our portals of power, menstrual cycle, childbirth, and menopause, have all been pathologized, medicalized, weaponized against us, and monetized.
In this conversation, we explore the deeper mysteries of perimenopause and menopause.
Menstrual cycle is preparation for birth. Birth is preparation for menopause. Menopause is currently a $16 billion industry, and in 2030, there will be 1.2 billion menopausal women on the planet. We've been groomed to use drugs, HRT, at menopause.
And now, I have the absolute honour of welcoming Jane Hardwicke Collings. Wow, Keshia, how great is the quality of your new podcast, Return to Wisdom? Oh, mate, I know. I have been recording at Byron Bay's premium content and podcast recording studio, Pod Byron. They are epic. It's new, it's fresh, it's legit, as you can see. If you want to upskill your brand, if you want to create a course online, this is the place to do it. Jump on at podbyron.com and be sure to check the show notes for a sneaky little discount on your first session. Pod Byron is where it's at. You! Before we get into today's show, I firstly want to thank you for being here. It is because you tune in each week that I'm able to continue on, and I really appreciate your support. Secondly, if you enjoy the content, please head on over to the homepage of the show. Hit subscribe, like, share, and please review the channel. It would mean the world. This is a small way you can contribute to better guests and greater conversations. You're listening to Return to Wisdom with Keshia. Welcome everyone to Return to Wisdom. Today I have the honour of introducing you guys. No one needs the introduction to Jane Hardwicke Collings, but I'm so excited to have you here. For those who don't know, Jane is a teacher. She was a midwife of 30 years, I believe, and a women's wisdom keeper. And Jane has profoundly changed the lives and I guess the way people interpret their seasons and cycles with the work that she has done. So welcome, Jane, and thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, thank you, Keshia. It's so lovely to be here, and thank you for the invitation.
Oh, no, I think I've been begging to have you on for a little while now. So the pleasure is absolutely mine, and definitely a lot of my audience, they have been asking for you since your work is just incredible and so many people can relate. And I think whenever I've listened to a podcast or even some of your content that you've created online, I'm like, oh my gosh, mind blown. Like, how has no one ever said that before? And it just completely reshapes the way that I feel about myself as a woman. So I'm really excited for this chat. I do really want to dive into menopause. But before we do, I wanted to ask about your 4 seasons journey, because I know that is coming up really soon. I think on the day that this releases, people will have about 9 days to register, and it's your last 4 seasons journey. Could you explain a little bit of that to our listeners?
Certainly. So the 4 seasons journey is the original way and current that the School of Shamanic Womancraft, so that's my international women's mystery school that I started 17 years ago. The 4 seasons journey has progressed through the years, and I think we're up to, this one might be close to the 40th or the high 30s in terms of the number of 4 seasons journeys that have happened, both in Australia and overseas, and like somewhere between 500 and 600 women who've gone through the program. So it's something that's been around for a long time and is a trusted process, basically. So it's called the 4 Seasons Journey because it goes through the 4 seasons. So it's over a year, and it's a deep immersion into the women's mysteries. So if you don't know what the women's mysteries are, then that means you need to learn about the women's mysteries. And basically what that is the wisdom of the cycles and our rites of passage and the menstrual cycle and childbirth and menopause and all the really life-changing and life-creating processes or rites of passage, transformations that we go through. So the 4 Seasons Journey is like a year of remembering all of that, a year of self-healing and learning, a year of lot of creativity. The women make a drum, a frame drum, and many other things, masks and crowns and all kinds of beautiful things. Basically, it's a year-long circle. And when I say year-long, there's 6 gatherings, and then there's work that we do in between the gatherings in preparation for the next one. So there's an opening gathering, a full moon gathering. So that's connecting in with the lunar cycle. Then there's a dark moon gathering. Then there's a wilderness solo or a vision quest, and then a debrief of that, and then a closing gathering. So it's spread out over a year. That's encompassing the 4 seasons. So it's basically an awakening and a remembering of all the things that it's ancient wisdom. It's nothing new in it. It's ancient wisdom for a modern day woman, basically. And it gives the participant a toolkit for how to navigate life on Earth. It's kind of female earthling 101 information, basically. And it helps with a toolkit of understanding and remembering all of that, but also healing your previous rites of passage and preparing for the next ones with a more aware and awake mind about what the effect of them is and therefore what you want to do about it and the healing opportunities, and a connect into our body and the earth and the moon and the seasons and all the things. So it's really just, it's living the healed sisterhood and creating a circle together and living the sacred feminine for all our relations. It's a life-changing and life-affirming process that is so, so wonderful.
And I think one of the highlights of this round of it is that you will be sitting with the women and participating in it. Can you explain your decision about that?
Yes. Yeah. So this is actually going to be the last 4 Seasons Journey ever in this year-long format. And that's because the school is now 17 years old. So she's grown up, basically. And interestingly, in the life of a business, at 17 years old, there's a shift. There's a rite of passage, and it goes from the adolescence of the business into the adulthood or prime of the business. And like all rites of passage, it requires a refocus, some clarity, and movement forward in a sustainable way. So one of the things is changing in the moving forward is that this is the final 4 Seasons Journey in this format. And because of that, I'm going to sit in circle as what we call a journey woman. I'm going to journey with all the other women as a journey woman under the wonderful teachers of Sequoia Glastonbury and Lua Mignon Hodges, both of whom I've trained, and apprentices and interns and new teachers, all of whom I've been participating in the training of. So for me to go and sit in the circle this last time, it's kind of like it completes the loop for me from the very first one back in 2009 to this next and final one in 2026. So it's really exciting for me to imagine being there as a participant and doing all the internal healing in a focused way where I'm not trying to teach it at the same time. So I'm taking the wonderful opportunity to do that. And I know what happens in this journey. Like, I know what unfolds. I know what the prospects are. And so I'm really looking forward to that for myself at this point in my life, because I'm going to turn 68 during the year of the Four Seasons journey, and that's 2 years back from, so 2 years to go until I go into the winter season of my life, the crone season. So I'm at this point in my life journey where doing this work is going to contribute to the transformation that will be happening anyway in my life at this age. And so to really hone it and focus in on all the material, all the rites of passage that will be healed, the childhood trauma, the relationship with guides and teachers and animal allies, and then the 3 days and 3 nights on my own. This is for everybody, on your own, in the bush for 3 days and 3 nights, fasting if that suits your metabolism or not if it doesn't, to have 3 days and 3 nights of uninterrupted communion, basically with the mother, the earth. And so that happens, and I'm looking forward to that because I know that changes everything. And I'm looking forward to that transformation in my own life. So, and I know what happens to the circle of women who are the journey women together. It's so beautiful. It's a sisterhood that goes forever. So I'm looking forward to forming that sisterhood with my other journey women who will be joining me in that final circle.
I've seen it. I've not yet participated, but I feel like I need to now. But I have seen it amongst friends who have participated together, and the bonds and relationships that they share with each other is really phenomenal, and it's envy worthy. So, no, it sounds remarkable, really. And I also just wanted to quickly ask, who is this designed for? Or what cohort would you speak to about this?
Women. So basically adult. So obviously you got to be able to decide that you want to do it. And, so 18 or turning 18 to whenever, basically.
Oh, okay. Amazing.
It's everybody.
Yeah.
And one of the magical things that happens when we sit in an all age, all life season circle, which I've done for, decades, is a whole nother level of magic happens for everybody. Because when maidens, so under 25-year-olds, sit in circles with mothers, in the summer of their lives, 25 to menopause, and then Margas or majors, menopause to 70, and if we have the blessing and good fortune to have any crones, 70 years and older, when everybody sits together, it's so amazing. The individual gets to imagine through the many faces of the goddess, the other women, their experience in all the other seasons that they've passed through or are still to come to. And it's kind of like, it feels like natural habitat style, like you're there with your mother, your grandmother, your auntie, your sisters. It's a more normal kind of arrangement. It's the family sort of setup where there's all ages. So yeah, this is available to everybody, all the women who really, well, I guess the biggest thing that happens is an awakening and the remembering. So the younger you are when you do this, the better. But whatever age is so helpful because you get to make sense of everything that's already happened and how it's been impacting you and do the healing work required. So as well as the 6 gatherings over the year, there's also the attendance to there's 4 one-day workshops that support the Four Seasons journey that go deeper into the menstrual cycle, childbirth and birthing, whatever, and menopause, and then the crone and aging and death. So as a participant in the Four Seasons journey, you do 2 of each of those workshops over the year, and they'll be with me or any of the other teachers that are doing it. So it's a huge year for everybody, and whenever one feels the call, that's the right time, whatever age you are.
Yeah, I think that is something that we are absolutely missing in our communities structures at the moment. Like, how I've experienced motherhood is with other mothers. I don't have nearly enough people who are older, or women who are older and wiser, or women who are maidens who are also gathering around me. It is me and my mother friends, and we all hang together, and we're all in the same season together. And so having the opportunity to sit with women in all of the stages of womanhood is I can only imagine the amount that would shift, and how much wisdom you would be able to absorb from those younger and those older, and
totally.
just even through story. Like, story is so important.
Yeah.
Important. Story is so important and potent. I just mix those two words together. Potent. I feel like that's just such an incredible opportunity. I would highly recommend anyone listening right now to get on board, because wow, like, incredible. And to be journeying with you, Jane, what an honor.
Likewise, for me to be journeying with everybody else is an honor. That's the thing, you know. It's such an honor to do this together.
All right. Now, what I would really love to get into at the moment, I think not everyone, but a lot of my audience is finishing up their motherhood journey, and now looking at perimenopause and menopause. The propaganda campaign around perimenopause and menopause is rife. There's a lot of information out there about all of the awful things you're going to go through, and I think a lot of people are worried about being invalid humans once they reach menopause. So I would love to use this discussion today with you, Jane, to eliminate those thoughts and beliefs. I love how you speak about this season in our lives, and I guess let's start with how you would define perimenopause and menopause.
Well, first of all, I've decided that they're ridiculous terms that nobody understands and can't figure out, well, what's pre, what's peri, what's menopause, what's postmenopause, which is, they're all medical terms. And so it's not a medical event. That's the first thing. So the trickery that happens with the medical terms is part of the kind of like, you know, it's something wrong. It's a disease process, etc. So I've decided to rename it. And I've renamed all the pre, peri, post, blah, blah, blah. So just to say, pre is before, peri means around, menopause means the last period, and postmenopause is a year or two after the last period. So I've decided to change the name to be in keeping with the other big major developmental phases of our lives. So we all know about adolescence, right? The becoming an adult that happens around puberty and around menarche for girls. And so puberty, adolescence, you know, it takes quite a while and it's a process, and you're becoming an adult. Whether you actually do or not depends on how you're nurtured through that and cared for, and the role models you have. So that's adolescence. And then matrescence, which is the becoming a mother. Now, this is a relatively new term. It's only 70 years old, and it takes a long time for things to catch on. But it's a term that was coined by a woman called Dana Raphael in the 1970s, using the framework of adolescence to describe matrescence, the becoming a mother. And the whole point of it being that it's not instant, it's a process, and part of the process is your process and deciding what kind of mother you're going to be, and doing the healing you need to do, and learning and all the things to become a mother. And then so what my new name for all the pre, peri, post menopause is sagescence, the becoming a wise woman. And that takes as long as it takes. and is incorporating a lot of things that need to happen for us to become a wise woman. It's not an instant thing. You don't just stop bleeding and then you're a wise woman. You don't just stop birth and then you feel like the mother, like some women do, and that's awesome, but it's a becoming. So, interestingly, as well, we can learn a lot about menopause, perimenopause, postmenopause, sage essence by remembering the connection between that and adolescence and matrescence. And as a midwife, I can really see sage essence, perimenopause, and postmenopause with midwife eyes and heart, and bring what we've learned so far to menopause, sage essence, rather than thinking it's some new random isolated event. It's not. And the things that happen that are the same in each of these big developmental changes are changes to our body. Remember puberty? Like there's so many changes, and lots of changes to our brain, including neural pruning and increased neuroplasticity, because we need to get rid of all the old neural pathways that we don't use anymore, increase neuroplasticity so we can learn all the things we need to learn. There's a lot you need to learn to become an adult. The same thing happens at matrescence, neural pruning and increased neuroplasticity. There's a lot of things you need to learn to be a mother, right? And a lot of things to let go, neural pruning. Same thing happens at sage essence, perimenopause and menopause and postmenopause. Neural pruning and increased neuroplasticity. So, it's putting it all together and seeing that menarche, our first period, and menopause are the bookends to our fertility, not some random disease process. So menopause is the final blood mystery. So this is the ancient wisdom, the women's mysteries, that is including what I said, menarche, first sexual experience. Every pregnancy results in a birth. Whatever finishes the birth, pregnancy is a birth. Could be a loss or an abortion or a baby. And then menopause. So it's a blood mystery, and it's a time of great change. It's not called the change of life for nothing. It's when we go through a process that happens without us thinking about it, just like childbirth and the menstrual cycle. You don't have to think about it. It's a bodily process that's on automatic, that has a clock and happens just like everything else. So to not see it in the place it has in our lives, and to see it only as something terrible, something to be protected from, something to avoid, is really missing missing the magic, missing the transformation, and missing the importance of it. But in a patriarchal culture, there's no surprise, right? All our portals of power, menstrual cycle, childbirth, and menopause, have all been pathologized, medicalized, weaponized against us, and monetized. And anything to do with women or the feminine that's put down, feared, made into a taboo, turned invisible or made a joke of, anything like that is a clue that it holds great power. You think about the yuck of the menstrual blood. Menstrual blood is like this incredible elixir. In fact, there's been some information in the mainstream media just this last month about, whoa, menstrual blood, it's not a toxic fluid. It's got the most stem cells in it as any bodily fluid. And it's a healing, it's a way to look at a woman's well-being, etc., etc. So there's so much more to our menstrual cycle than we would be led to believe. And childbirth as a rite of passage, as an experience, is hugely important, because however you give birth choreographs your mothering. And then it creates the birth imprint for the baby that's with them forever. And then menopause is as it's being called in traditional Chinese medicine, the second spring. Like it's a rebirth. Ooh. And as a midwife, I can see a birth when I see one, if you know what I mean.
Yes.
And yeah, we've learned a lot from childbirth that we need to bring to menopause, and not just think that it's some isolated thing.
I love that. A second spring. Ooh, That like, why don't we talk about it like that? Like, if everyone was just like, oh, you're going into your second spring, like, I think every woman would be like, yes, I am.
Yes,
Yes, I
exactly.
am.
And it's no surprise that it's not talked about like that because, here's another little bit of information. Menopause is currently a $16 billion industry. And in 2030, so that's like 4 years away, there will be 1.2 billion menopausal women on the planet. So seeing it as a natural process that, is not going to make much money.
No. No, seeing any of it as a natural process doesn't make much money, does it? We're seeing that play out through birth a lot in the media at the moment, but in so many areas.
Yeah. Be suspicious of everything you see about any of our portals of power and some sort of judgment and prescription about how we should be doing it. Be very suspicious.
Yeah, that's something that does actually blow my mind because I mean I've gone deep into the natural birth world, having given birth 5 times myself. It has been quite a journey over a 10-year period. Thank you, but when I look at the natural birth world, or those who are like, birth is a natural event and occurs spontaneously, and 99% of the time, if it's left alone, it will just happen. But then those same people are like, oh, yes, you're in perimenopause. There's a progesterone cream that you can use for that. Oh, you're feeling this experience and this. That's because you're going through perimenopause. And I had this conversation actually with Kimberly Ann Johnson, where I was told recently that perimenopause starts at 33. And I was like, what? How interesting. I don't feel like I'm in perimenopause at all. But like, I know women who are my age and younger who have started on progesterone creams or progesterone like internals. So anyway, after that little spiel, how do you feel about medicating menopause?
Well, I know as a midwife that there are some women who need help with childbirth, but not everybody. And I know as a menstrual educator that there are some women that need help with their menstrual cycle, but not everybody. And both of those situations are usually a bigger story. It's not just pathology, it's often lifestyle related and also fears. Fears that we've inherited either from our mother line, our red thread, our female generational story, or from the culture, or from the previous rites of passage, because one leads to the next. So as a midwife, I know that there will be people who need help. But just to use birth as an example, right now in Australia, and it won't be very different in other Western medical maternity services, right now, less than 50% of women push their babies out of their vagina. So, like, that's a tragedy and a readout of the maternity care services and where they're messing up, actually, because that is not the appropriate vaginal birth rate for women. That's not what it should be. That's not. We everybody knows that. Who's in the business? Everybody knows that. Everybody knows that that's a result of intervention, which is mostly unnecessary. It's called the cascade of intervention. One thing leads to the next. Blah blah blah. And because it's a rite of passage, and I'm focusing in on childbirth in terms of where it goes for menopause, and therefore HRT, is that women are encouraged to think that they can't handle childbirth, that they won't be able to handle the pain, their bodies don't work properly, it's risky, blah, blah, blah. So they're encouraged to doubt the process and use intervention and drugs to relieve the pain and whatnot. And that really just totally messes with the process and ends up in that scenario of less than 50% of women pushing their babies out of their vaginas. And that's not the end of the story. That means there's been a lot of intervention and traumatic birth experiences lead to birth trauma. And 1 in 3 women have birth trauma. And 1 in 10 of those 1 in 3 have PTSD from their birth experience. So, that's a brain injury, and that affects everybody. And it's terrible outcome that was probably unnecessary in the beginning, from the beginning. So that's the prequel to menopause, whatever birth experiences that you've had. So however you've been enculturated, because it's a rite of passage, childbirth. So menarche, our first period, every pregnancy results in a birth. Whatever finishes the pregnancy is the birth, losses, abortions, or births. And then menopause, one rite of passage leads to the next. So think about menopause and the use of HRT whilst I'm describing this. So what happens at a rite of passage and what doesn't happen? Who's there, what they say, who's not there, what doesn't get said, and what's going on in your world in terms of influence at that time. So this happens for every rite of passage. That all adds up together and teaches us on a subliminal level, which means we don't even realize we're being taught. We're being enculturated, which is just a nice way of saying brainwashed, into how our culture values the next role we're going into. So at menarche, that's woman. At childbirth, that's mother. Menopause, that's wise woman, second half of your life. And therefore, so it teaches you how the culture values the next role you're going into, and therefore how we have to behave to be accepted by the culture in that role. And one leads to the next. She who is initiated into womanhood at menarche is the woman that shows up to give birth, completely enculturated into how she's supposed to behave as a woman. And the menstrual cycle is part of the process to teach us body literacy and cycle intelligence. So if we do what most women do, which is follow the encouragement to reject your menstrual cycle or at least turn it off, then, we don't learn from the menstrual cycle. Menstrual cycle is preparation for birth. Birth is preparation for menopause. And one leads to the next. But the thing is that whenever you come to your next rite of passage, your previous rites of passage are not curses. They're things to notice, because when you come to your new rite of passage, so everybody who's listening, who's in perimenopause, they come to a fork in the road. This is for every next rite of passage, a fork in the road. One way is the usual way, the same old way, the way it always happens to me or in my family or in my community. And that's the wounded way, but we don't even realize it. The other fork is the healed way. And to even know there's a healed way, you have to realize you're on the wounded way. Then you need to do the inner work that bridges the two, that sets you off in the healed direction, which doesn't mean all of a sudden everything's going to go your way. It means you start to recognize the decisions and the fears and attitudes and beliefs that kept leading to the same old thing. My body's unreliable. My body doesn't work. My pelvis is too small. I'm too this. I'm too that, blah, blah, blah. And then you can change those decisions and mindsets and head off into the healed direction. And that is awake and aware, because we will have the rite of passage we need to have to teach us what we need to learn about ourselves to take us to the next place on our journey. So we've been groomed to use drugs, HRT, at menopause, because we're encouraged to switch off the menstrual cycle with the pill. So famous, it's called the pill. And, just a little anti-ad for the pill. When you're on the pill, you are attracted to a very different kind of man than you would be if you were not on the pill. When you're on the pill, it's like a pseudo pregnancy and you're attracted to someone who's like family, who'll look after you. When you're not on the pill, you're attracted to someone with as much difference in your genetic material as possible, because that ensures the highest likelihood of the survival rate of the egg and the sperm together, the conceptus. So sadly, what happens is women are on the pill, they meet their mate, they want to make babies, they go off the pill, and then all of a sudden he doesn't smell right. And smell as in terms of pheromones. And then they think, oh, but I wanted to have babies with him before. Maybe, I'm crazy, something's wrong with me. Not. But we ignore those things because we just, we're going to have a baby. And then apparently that is hugely attributable. That scenario contributes to miscarriage rates and infertility. So that's just one little thing on the side, the pill. Now, back to the grooming to use HRT at menopause. So the pill, or just plugging yourself up and taking Panadol or whatever and carrying on business as usual and not showing any weakness, not resting. You don't rest in a patriarchy. That's like treason. Don't rest, keep going. So that, and then come childbirth, and less than 50% of women are pushing their babies out of the vagina. The epidural rate is through the roof. Inductions for no reason other than, your babies are like, it's all bullshit, and then, so in childbirth, we're groomed to have inductions and then to use some version of drugs for pain relief, whether that's opiate injections or gas via a mask or an epidural, and then, all the things. And then come menopause, well, what's the medicine? So the medicine now is HRT, but it's been rebranded. It's called MHT, or menopause hormone therapy, because the pill is hormone replacement therapy. Like, there's lots of hormone replacement therapy, but it's been rebranded and is specific for menopause, MHT. So like I said, I know there'll be some women who will need it because of pathology, right? So, but not everybody. But right now, it looks like everybody thinks they have to, because if they don't, because what's happened is menopause has been turned into a disease and a hormonal deficiency. So, you replace the hormones, you don't have the disease. That's the mentality. Now, HRT used to be something that was used because it's not a mild thing. Introducing a hormone changes everything. So in menopause, perimenopause, sage essence, HRT was used for severe symptoms. Now, symptoms isn't even the right word, because symptoms means a disease, and it's not a disease. We've got to watch the language we're using that keeps reinforcing it as something really terrible. So HRT was used for severe symptoms. Now, severe means severe, right? Not mild or moderate, but severe. And, that has to be both a combination of subjective and objective and related to everything else, so that it's not just, it would be the same, having a hot flush and thinking, I can't handle this, or whatever, would be the same thing as booking in for an epidural before you even have a baby. Like, you've got to be with the process, because it's the process that's teaching you things as well as changing you. So it used to be just for severe symptoms and for as little time as possible, maximum 5 years. So now it's like so many different ways and lengths of time. It's now actually seen as preventative medicine, and something that's going to prevent all these dreadful things that poor old menopause has been blamed for causing. Like, menopause is being blamed for causing all these things like osteoporosis, dementia, and cardiovascular disease. Now, osteoporosis and cardiovascular disease, and pretty much dementia, I think, but maybe not so much, are chronic conditions that menopause revealed. Menopause doesn't cause it. It just happens around that time in your life. So women are not going to all of a sudden develop osteoporosis or all of a sudden develop cardiovascular disease. It's going to have been a long time coming. And one of the main contributors to osteoporosis post-menopause, and remember, there's osteopenia, which comes before osteoporosis. Osteopenia is low bone density, and osteoporosis is, very low. So one of the main contributors to that is a previous eating disorder, being on the oral contraceptive pill, smoking cigarettes, and drinking lots of alcohol. Like, welcome 80% of the women, let's say. So in terms of bone density, our bone density peaks in our 20s, and then it slowly declines, which is fine if you're fine. It drops 10% when you're in menopause, which is fine if you're fine, but it's not fine if you've got this particularly eating disorder in the background. So it doesn't mean if that's happened, it's a curse. It means you've got to get your bone density up before you get to perimenopause. And there's lots of ways to do that. You just need to speak to a naturopath and they'll help you sort it out with supplements and lifestyle changes. So now, HRT, well, like on Instagram, there's a HRT festival going on about all the all the ways and all the benefits and all the if you don't, you're risking your this, that, and the other, and blah blah. Now, because I'm a midwife, I've heard all this before about birth. You know, and you too, like you've heard all the bullshit that gets spun to scare women about childbirth, you know, such that some women just book in and have a cesarean section thinking that that's the safest thing. Like, you know, so bringing what we've learned from birth to menopause is very helpful. And HRT, like I know that every woman who chooses to use HRT, MHT, is making the right decision for themselves. But what I wonder is, have they got all the information? So that's where I come in as the old woman who's talking about all the natural ways to do it and all the ways to understand our body and our process and all of that, and to encourage women to read the side effects of the drugs, to realize that once you start taking HRT, you become a patient that requires testing and you know, the expense of the medicine. I mean, it's probably on the pharmaceutical benefits by now, and it will be if it's not, because you know it's the latest greatest thing. And so there are so many other things to try first before you come in with this big change your hormone profile. And that is lifestyle stuff. You know, most women experience an incredible decrease and sometimes even disappearance of the symptoms when they stop drinking alcohol and reduce their caffeine intake. Like the amount of coffee you drink and the amount of hot flushes you have are related. And alcohol and stress, you know, and you've got to eat properly. You can't just eat your children's leftovers anymore. You need to eat properly. And you need to exercise and sleep. And the other really big thing is that menopause, there are no surprises, as I said, at menopause. Or maybe I did. Did I say that already? No. Menopause is what your experience at menopause is a setup. And we can predict what's going to happen, because it's the harvest of our life. It's very similar in the cycles to week 3 of the menstrual cycle. So, you know, most women who experience a difficult week 3 go, oh no. So week 3 of the menstrual cycle, there's a decline in estrogen. And so in week 3 in the menstrual cycle, it's known as the truth-telling time, the time when women no longer comply. So how we are in week 3 of our menstrual cycle is like a prequel to how we'll be in perimenopause. So there's a bit of a clue and where you can start working on it. So preparation for menopause is understanding what's going on so you don't freak out and think, oh, I just need to take the hormones, because it's a process that's happening on purpose to change you, to transform you into the next version of yourself. Now, does that still happen does that still happen with HRT? Of course it's going to happen at some degree, but it's a bit like the difference between having a managed childbirth experience and having a empowering birth. So no judgment for whatever anyone chooses, but just make sure you know what's going on.
Yeah. And I think the correlations that I kind of make is when you look at birth and you look at what each intervention, not only the side effects of those interventions, but what are you missing out on when you numb the pain of labor? What are you missing out on when you have someone pulling your baby out for you? What are you missing out on when you don't get to go through the process? And I mean, there are so many studies now in birth that show when you do numb the pain, like when you have an epidural, it actually decreases your ability to bond with your baby, which has massive consequences with breastfeeding. And not for everyone, but these are the things that, all correlations that we've seen. And so when you take that logic and bring it into menopause, you're like, oh, like what am I going to miss out on? And like another thing that I love, and I think I've heard you say this, but I've heard a few say it. It's like labor prepares you for motherhood. Like if you don't go through labor,
you have a different experience.
yeah, but like I think that you don't know your limitations. Like labor gives you this beautiful picture of like, where are my limits? How far can I be pushed before I break? And you can be pushed a really long way before you break. And coming into motherhood with that knowledge is like phenomenal. Like that is
Totally.
like, yeah. And like, what a gift.
And
be
also
given.
to bring that to menopause, you know, like
yeah.
for myself, I was able to remember not just what I did do in giving birth, because I feel like the menstrual cycle teaches us how to live. The birth teaches us what we're capable of. And menopause teaches us who we are. So back to the birth. So to remember what I had experienced in birthing, which, you know, was huge. Like every birth is gigantic and huge and stretches us to the places that, well, I mean, stretches our vagina open like that, you know, and our perineum open like how would you even imagine that was possible? So the other thing about birth is it prepares us for menopause. Whatever you learn about yourself in birthing each of the babies, or in losing them, or in aborting them, because they're all births, whatever we learn through our birthing experience is preparation for menopause. So I have this thing called the birthing formula where we go through all of our births and figure out what they taught us so that we're ready for menopause. Well, ready for a lot of things, but in preparation for menopause, it's what you need to remember what birth taught you. So you bring that. Now, just as an example, my 3 births were teachings in surrender, trust the process, and be in the present moment. Big stories behind all of those that we haven't got time to go into, but that's what I needed to remember for menopause. I needed to surrender, which for me meant stop trying to stop it, or stop trying to stop obsessing about, surrender, trust the process, and be in the present moment. And just like a birth, one contraction at a time, you know. So same mentality to menopause. It's just in the present moment and just do function, which you can. It's like, it's huge, but it's a very doable and teaching and enlightening and empowering experience. So to remember what birth taught us is essential in preparation for menopause. So I can't remember if that was if that's a good enough answer to the question.
No, I think that's perfect. I had a few questions that probably are a little bit more spicy. Why do women live past their fertile years?
Good question. So this was posed by evolutionary biologists some time ago. Why do women live beyond their fertility? What could possibly be the use of them? So what they did was look to nature, because that's what evolutionary biologists do, look to nature. And what they found was that there are only 5 species on the planet that go through menopause. So that's human women, beluga whales, pilot whales, orca, and narwhals. So they went to have a look at all of those. They're called the toothed whales. And what they found was that the role, because that's what we're looking for, what's the point? The role of the post-reproductive grandma whale was to be the leader of the pod. So that's the blueprint for mammals who go through menopause, leadership. And in the whale world, that works because as leaders of the pod, their grandchildren thrive and live longer. Their daughters have more babies, and they keep their sons out of fights. And they know where the food is, so they know with the currents and the seasons. So it helps the pod survive. And if there is no matriarchal, postmenopausal grandma whale there, the pod goes to shit. So that's what we need to look at, because it's really important that we remember we're animals and that we're actually mammals. And so we're not some isolated creature. We're mammals on planet Earth, and there are other mammals that do the same things, and we can learn from them. And so this is called the grandmother hypothesis. And the idea is that in humans, that having alive grandmothers, same as the whales, helps the children thrive, helps the daughters have babies. I don't know whether it keeps the sons out. We keep our sons out of fights, but maybe. And so it's an important role in a community that ensures thriving. So that's the grandmother hypothesis that is given to the answer to the question of why do women live beyond their fertility. And whenever I share that information in my workshops or online stuff, the first thing that happens for women when they hear that question, why do women live beyond fertility, what's the use of them, is just this rage, this like, how dare that question even be posed? So that's not, got to look like, why like, whoa.
I know, and there's been so much science around it, so it. Oh dear. That actually correlates quite well with a conversation I had earlier with a doctor, Paul Turk, and he looks at extended kinship networks and the importance of having grandparents in the picture and being with extended kinship networks, especially for young children. So I love that. And then when you look at like the hormone fluctuation and loss and gain, being a leader makes so much sense, because you are losing your estrogen and progesterone, which, like, I think I've heard you speak about that being the hormones of accommodation, and you can come out of your people-pleasing era, which, I mean, we all talk about how we don't want to be people pleasers, but as mothers, we kind of don't have a choice. we need to, because we have tiny little people that we got to please. So
that's different. Yeah. People pleasing and raising children is completely different.
Yeah.
And people pleasing has a lot of other prequels to it, including how we were initiated into womanhood at menarche. And so in the child rearing years, when we are totally under the influence of estrogen, the hormone of accommodation and self-sacrifice, we're richly rewarded for that too. So our dopamine reward system is switched on to service, and we feel good when we do it. But that changes at menopause. The dopamine reward system changes, and we're no longer rewarded for looking after everybody else. We're rewarded for the things that are about us. And postmenopausally, in terms of leadership, there's a lot of other good things that happen to our brain through the process that really prime us for leadership. And one of them is that our amygdala, which is the part of our brain that, basically has temper tantrums or jumping 10 feet when you see a snake or whatever, like it's the immediate risk assessment, that calms down. That is less reactive post-menopause. And so we're calmer. And the other thing that happens is we think more clearly. We have clarity of thought, and that's because the brain fuel changes from glucose to ketones. And anyone who's done a ketogenic diet knows that the ketone brain is amazing. So that's how the brain wants to work post-menopause. Clear thinking. And there's a lot of other things that happen with menopause that don't get talked about, and of the gifts of it. And one of them is our immune system starts to run at 100%. Because when we're fertile, it's not 100%. Our immune system is dampened or dialed down a bit so we don't reject pregnancies. So post-menopause, our immune system rises to where it's supposed to be.
No, keep going. I want to hear all of these benefits. I'm getting excited.
Yeah, okay.
Let's go.
Okay. Well, our new dominant sex hormone post-menopause is testosterone. So that's why we get hairs on our chin if we haven't already had them, and we have a lot to say, and we have longer and stronger orgasms.
The beauties.
Yes. So there's so many amazing things that happen as the body changes, including our priorities and our desires. And they are not in keeping with the ideal female in a patriarchy. There's no surprises why the older, wiser woman is being rebranded as a witch. Anything to do with women or the feminine that's put down means it is a clue that it holds great power. So menopause holds great power.
Can I push a little bit on the patriarchy? Only because I've been looking into the patriarchy more and more, and it feels like when it's used commonly now, it's actually feels a bit like an attack on all men. And so I feel like when we talk about the patriarchy, there's actually a lot of women who are putting women down. It's not so much men, like the men in my life especially love their women, want to see their women thrive, and will do anything for the women in their lives. And so it's really hard to put those two things together, especially when I see so many women bringing women down, and women calling women witches, and women being angry at other women for their birth choices. And it feels not, I don't know if patriarchy encompasses that for me anymore. So maybe if you could define patriarchy from your standpoint, because I've been having a hard time with that word of late.
Yeah, I hear you. But, what you've just said all describes the conditions of a patriarchy. So the wounded sisterhood, and women having to be more yang, more like a man than a man to even get anywhere in careers and stuff. So the important thing to know about a patriarchy is it's the culture. It's not women against men or men against women. The cultures that have survived the patriarchy, which is a period of time, like it hasn't finished yet, and it started way back, like BC, when the goddess-oriented cultures were changed by the Roman Catholic Church into the one God rather than the goddesses and the relationship with the earth. And then the medical system was created in the 13th century in the middle of the witch hunts. And so the backstory to all of this is huge. I've written a little book about it. It's called The Her Story. But the only cultures that survived the patriarchy also sacrificed their men. So not just women, but their men too. So men were sacrificed by having to fight for their country, and that still happens, and sacrificed by not being able to pursue their dreams. They had to work for the man. They had to be the provider. And I'm not saying that's not something that men want to do, but the currency is the money, and that they have to work within that framework to get that. So it's not men against women. It's not women against men. It's a co-creation. And then the phenomena of women behaving in the way that you just said now is what I call the wounded sisterhood. And the wounded sisterhood is one of the tactics of a patriarchy. And it's an age-old war tactic. It's called divide and conquer. And whilst we are we are encouraged to criticize each other, compete with each other, compare ourselves to each other, and judge each other. That's what we're encouraged to do. And that creates the wounded sisterhood. And the wounded sisterhood is the way that it is right now. It's part of the patriarchy. And it's the divide and conquer, because whilst ever we are divided, we are really easy to conquer and we fight amongst ourselves. But if we could co-create the healed sisterhood, which is the place of no judgment, the place of no comparison, no competing, no criticism, just acceptance and compassion for each other, including ourselves, then we can co-create the healed sisterhood, and we will not be divided and we will not be conquered. So there's two things I think we need to do in our time right now in this what I hope is the death throes of the patriarchy, and that is to heal the sisterhood in the way I've just been saying, but also, and before we could do that, what we actually need to do is to dismantle our internalized patriarchy. Now, we've all internalized the patriarchy. We can't not have. We were raised by a mother who was raised in the patriarchy, who was raised by a mother who was raised all the way back for like a very, 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 very long time. And in that place, then, with the internalized patriarchy, we have to dismantle it. And we can't dismantle the patriarchy on the outside until we've dismantled how we have internalized it. And that is how we judge ourselves, how we criticize ourselves, how we do the comparison and the competing. And so if we could dismantle our internalized patriarchy, co-create the healed sisterhood, then everything will change. And I would also add to that recipe to honor our rites of passage and heal the previous ones. And all of that will add up to connecting to the earth, and that would be a good thing.
Yeah. Oh, can I ask, what does the healing or the dismantling of a patriarchy then become a matriarchy, or is there like a middle ground in there?
I think a middle ground for sure. And I think I don't think the culture is going to like stop being a patriarchy and then be something else. I think that we will be doing the healing within the culture that we have, and then there becomes these little shifts, or there becomes pockets in the world where there's a different thing going on, or there becomes a community that honors rites of passage, or there becomes a place where you can go to learn about whatever, or there's support for dismantling your internalized patriarchy, or therapy for healing the wounded sisterhood. So like, I don't think there's going to be becoming a matriarchy. I think it's more about everybody equal, not equality. See, currently equality between the sexes is based on women are equal to men so long as they can do what men do. Like there's a lot more, right?
And I feel like that, and I don't know, correct me if you see this differently, because I do absolutely value your thoughts on this, but from what I am looking into, it feels like feminism, or the later waves of feminism, kind of brought that out, like that competitive, competing with men and being equal to men, but meaning that we need to be like the equality looks more like us behaving and functioning like men. Is that it? Does that seem true for you, or are you?
Yeah, I think that what we can see through the history or herstory of feminism is the journey, like it's a growth cycle, and it grows, and then it goes to full bloom, and then it harvests, and then it decays, and then it dies, and it's reborn. And I think if we track feminism over the years, we see an example of where the main challenges were for women at that time historically. So I don't want to blame anybody for doing anything wrong, because I think that basically it's the evolution of it, and that the generations that are going to be stepping into power soon are going to have a completely different attitude completely. So to see the next wave, I don't know, maybe it will be a storm, maybe it'll be no wave. Like it's very telling of the culture at the time where what all this is in the dominant places.
Mm. I
So,
like that.
yes, that happened because it had to. That was what was required in that environment at that time.
Mm. Mm. You've given me a lot to think on, Jane.
Yeah, I think if we see things from a bigger picture perspective rather than picking out individual events or
Yeah.
stuff, then we can have but that's the wisdom of age.
I'll get there. I hope I'll get there. Because sometimes I look at myself and I'm like, when am I going to be like a proper mother?
Or grown up.
Like, yeah, grown
A
up.
proper
Like,
grown up.
yeah, grown up,
Yeah.
grown up. Like when do I become the adult in the room? Because it's like sometimes I just don't feel like I'm adulting at all. And I'll look back at something I've done or some behavior or something I've said and I'm like, oh damn, I am still a teenager.
I think, man, you'll always be a teenager. We'll always have our teenager in us. It's just, and actually, for women, our inner maiden teenager, or even younger, depends, is the one that's usually in the driver's seat most of the time, and most often in her most wounded form.
Yes, no, I feel that. I feel like
Yeah.
that pretty much sums up everyone.
Totally. So
Certainly
if
me.
we could all understand that's actually what's going on, then we can have compassion for ourselves and each other, because that's not what's happening.
No, but I do hope that when I hit menopause, I step into this like, oh, I'm a real adult now. Maybe, maybe I'll get there beforehand.
Well, there's a lot of other things that happen around the menopausal time in astrology, which give us the clues about becoming an adult and all of that. Like at about 56 or so is your second Saturn return. And that's about becoming a grown-up.
My first Saturn return was brutal, absolutely brutal. So something about Saturn returns got me a little like, ugh.
Well, no, like, it'll be different. It won't be the same.
Fingers crossed.
However, wherever you go, there you are.
Yeah. Preparation is key. Is there anything that we can do? I know you mentioned earlier that there are, obviously lifestyle habits that we can get into, and I feel like this audience would be fairly up to scratch with particular lifestyle habits that are going to improve your not just third week of your cycle, but your journey through menopause. But are there any other things that you can think of to prep us for that transition?
Yeah.
True story. I used to get panic attacks. And when I went and investigated this, it turns out I had low iron, something 1 in 3 of us have. Now, regular iron supplements, gross. They're full of synthetics. Your body doesn't even absorb it. And be honest, inflammation. So when I found this supplement, I just had to share it with you guys. It is Great Spirit. They are organic, synthetic free. It is all whole food based and they're produced here in Australia. I cannot believe the difference I've seen in my energy levels and no panic attacks. So if you want to check them out, you can head to greatspirit.com.au, use the code Keshia 20 for 20% off your first order and enjoy feeling good again.
I guess to say that when we see with a big picture perspective that menopause is the end of summer and the beginning of autumn. So if you think about what that looks like on the earth and what that heralds and what that shows and aligning it with week 3 of the menstrual cycle. So week 3 of the menstrual cycle, what happens there is like the biofeedback of the cycle so far. So from when day 1 of your cycle, how you managed or how you rested or didn't rest when you were bleeding, and how you navigated all the way up to week 3 of your menstrual cycle, that's the harvest. That's what shows up. The biofeedback in week 3 is of that part of the cycle. Now, menopause is the biofeedback of your life so far. So from 0 to however old you are when you start going through the change is going to be like that. So it's the biofeedback. So living healthily is a really good idea, and all the things that make that up, like diet, exercise, stress, work-life balance, relationships. Just like the menstrual cycle is a stress-sensitive system, and it shows all the toxins in your life, whether it's like biochemical or not biochemical, chemical, or even relationship toxicity, all shows up in your menstrual cycle. So menopause is like that for your whole life. The divorce rate at menopause is 40 to 60% of divorces happen at menopause, initiated by the women. Now, there's a reason behind that, and that is the first thing. I'll come back to what else to do to prepare, but this is such helpful information. The first thing that happens at perimenopause is that you don't ovulate every cycle. So step 1, honor your menstrual cycle, understand your menstrual cycle, work with your menstrual cycle. Know when you're ovulating. Use my Spinning Wheels app to help you.
I love it. I love it. It's my favorite.
Great. It's hashtag Jane in your pocket. So it's very helpful. And there's a menopausal version of it as well. So honor your menstrual cycle and use it as preparation it's great preparation for birth, even if that's your next rite of passage. Honor your menstrual cycle because it will be gone. And, that's one of the things that women miss and feel sad about. And often, many women get to menopause and think, oh, shit, I didn't pay attention to my menstrual cycle. Why didn't anybody tell me that was an important thing to do? So back to what we can do to prepare. Honor your menstrual cycle. Live cyclically. And to do some inner work. Don't wait till menopause to do your inner work, to go to therapy. Do your inner work. And it doesn't mean you have to go to therapy. You just got to do your inner work. Because if menopause is going to be a predictable setup, everything that arises is going to be a predictable setup, then you can prepare for it. Because as I said, the first thing that happens is you don't ovulate every cycle. And so many women have no idea even how to tell how they ovulate. Like, learn that. And then we don't ovulate every cycle because our progesterone level goes down first. And progesterone is a mild sedative. So we may never have noticed that we were mildly sedated, but we definitely notice when we are no longer mildly sedated. So that's the first thing that happens. So to even know that that's going to happen, then you don't think you're going crazy. When everything that you were so happy to do, yeah, I can do that for you, you're like, I don't really want to do that for you, etc. And then understanding the process is probably the best preparation, just in the same way that it's really necessary to understand childbirth. It's really necessary to prepare girls for the menstrual cycle by teaching them about it. So learn about it, honor the menstrual cycle, learn about menopause and what to expect, and do your healing, do your sexual healing, do your menstrual cycle healing, do any birth trauma healing that you need to do. Like why I'm saying to do this is another thing that happens at menopause is that with that progesterone level going down, progesterone as a mild sedative just keeps a lid on all the unresolved trauma that we have. And then the lid goes. And that's not a bad thing. That's an important thing, because now it's not about keeping you mildly sedated so you can look after everybody else. It's about you waking up and looking after yourself. So if we know what to expect, then it's going to be so much easier. And get strong. It's so much easier to build lots of muscle when you've got plenty of estrogen.
No, that's something that I've been following quite closely. I've started lifting my husband's weights whenever I get a moment, which isn't that often, but whenever I do. No, because I know, I studied exercise science, so I'm really aware of the importance of exercise, especially, after like 35 plus, I think, is when the scientists say to start getting onto it. And we'll see how accurate.
And also you can be lifting your children. That's good. And especially the load. I don't know, I'm not an exercise person with all the right words, but what is it called with weightlifting when it's loaded or something?
Load bearing.
Like so that, because if you carry your baby every day, they're getting bigger, so your muscles have to accommodate that, and you get stronger and stronger as the children get bigger and bigger while you're still carrying them, and that gives your muscles messages to give to your bones to make your bones stronger. So wear your babies and carry your children.
Incidental exercise.
Mm.
Yeah, wonderful. I feel like we are wrapping up soon, but can I finish on a question that's probably not a wrapping up question?
Of course.
I've been contending with the idea of youth and moving away from youth, and how we live in a culture that is very youth orientated and prioritizes and prizes youth, and correlating that with the fact that we have a tremendous fear of death. And I know that each phase is a death in and of itself. We are moving from being one person to another with each birth, during adolescence, which I think is why so many adolescent children are struggling with mental health at the moment. But then I imagine menopause is another one of those situations. Have you got words of wisdom for anyone listening who has those fears and holds that quite closely, what kind of processes they can go through or expect?
So, as you said, we live in a culture that's fixated on youth and beauty and 24/7 availability and instant gratification and growth. Growth, growth, growth. Every corporation has new growth targets every year. Like, there is nothing in nature that keeps growing that's healthy. And there is nothing in nature that stays the same and doesn't change that's healthy. So we don't visit nature, we're part of nature. We're the human variety of nature. So we don't get to avoid the cycle. Now, in terms of fearing the loss of youth, which I guess looks like a fear of aging and changing the body and capacity and capabilities and whatnot, like, I think my cranky old lady answer to that is get over it.
I love that.
Because nothing's going to change if all the women are just so concerned about maintaining a level or kind of beauty that's associated with youth. It's not possible, actually. Like, you have the amount of surgery and injectables and things like that are required to maintain that. Like, really? Do you want to do that? So the effort and the expense and the concern and the worry to maintain a youthful face and body, which is not what happens, like, it's something that you have to really work hard at doing to maintain, and costs a lot of money and a lot of attention to something that is not even real. And then you get to avoid all the extra things that happen when we embrace aging. Like the way the face changes, the body changes. In a culture that thinks that's ugly and even gross and whatnot, we have to embrace it. We need to take ourselves away from this particular kind of beauty as the only kind of beauty, because it's not. You think about an old apple tree in the garden, in the winter. Well, let's start. In the spring, it's gorgeous, like there's blossoms and the leaves coming. And then in the summer, it's full leaf and the fruit is starting to come. And then in the autumn, the fruit is the harvest. The tree lets go of it and all the leaves, it starts to look very shabby. And then in the winter, it's like a skeleton. But do we think that a tree in the winter looks disgusting? or that when the fruit and the leaves are falling off an apple tree, that is like, oh my God, she's let herself go. Like we've been had. We've been tricked into thinking that there's one kind of beauty and it's youth. It's bullshit.
I feel like a lot of people
And it
need to hear
makes a
that.
lot of people a lot of money.
Yeah. And I think something that you left out there that I'm going to insert is the toxic load that you have to take on to achieve. And what are you achieving? You still look aged. You just look different aged. Like
Totally.
You haven't stopped aging. You haven't stopped. Like how lucky
You're
if
just
we
freezing
get to
your
live
face.
Yeah, and
that's it. Like aging is a privilege. You know, I recently learned that fillers around here mess up your mirror neuron system. Another thing I've learned is that fillers around here, when you're in the mothering stage, confuse the shit out of your children, especially babies, because babies learn by watching the micro movements on their mother's face as to the reaction she's having to their behavior. And if she's got this frozen face, there's no reaction, so they don't learn the effect they're having. So it's not just, it's all those things as well.
Yeah. Oh, we could go on. We could. I told you it was going to be a big one. But no, thank you, Jane, so much for coming on and taking us through menopause, because I think that I know it's something that we are all going to contend with if we are lucky enough, and it is so nice to be prepared. I think a lot of people that I know didn't really start looking into the seasons or women's bodies or anything until after their first baby, and I fall into that category. And so it's so nice to think about the seasons to come and being, if not fully prepared, at least to start recognizing that there are going to be new changes and they are not necessarily bad things. That is actually a privilege and it's going to come with a lot of gifts. So it's something to look forward to.
Totally.
Okay, before you leave, Jane, let us know what is on apart from Four Seasons. Please take us through books, apps, any other courses you have coming up. We're in the Northern Rivers, so those in the Northern Rivers, I know that you have some courses or like day courses.
In Mullumbimby.
Yep.
I've got 4 one-day workshops in Mullumbimby, the last 3 days of November and 1st of December, that take us through the life season. So the first one's Moon Song, and it's about remembering the wisdom of the cycles and focusing on the menstrual cycle and menarche, rite of passage. Then the second one's the Shamanic Dimensions of Pregnancy, which focuses on birth, and not just births of babies. It goes into birthing other things as well, and is about our birth imprint and what birth teaches us. And then the next one is Autumn Woman, Harvest Queen, about menopause and menopause in context. And then the fourth one is Winter Woman, Bone Wisdom, which is about the crone life season, the winter of our life, about aging and about death. So they're coming up soon, and I do them once a year in Mullum. And the Four Seasons Journey, as you said. So the final date for application is November 20 for this current gathering, and to see, if we've got enough women to go ahead, and I imagine we will. And it starts in February next year. And then I've written lots of books. I haven't finished my menopause book yet. I'll call it Sage Essence. And online courses. And there's, like, if you can't come to the Four Seasons Journey, we've created an online version of it. It's called Earth Woman. And you can either do it yourself or you can do it guided by a teacher who I've trained over a 12-month period. There's a special offer at the moment. If you sign up for that before November 15, you get to come to a 6-week free circles with me online, starting November 15, every Saturday morning for 6 weeks for 90 minutes. It's an extra thing. So there's that as well. And that's amazing. And then there's lots of shorter e-courses on my website that are one's called Snake Medicine, Shedding Menstrual Shame. And then there's a pregnancy one and a menopause one as well. And my app, the Spinning Wheels app, which is how to live cyclically. Basically, it's the only holistic menstrual cycle charting app that is really actually my body of work in an app, as well as being able to chart your menstrual cycle. And as I said, there's a menopause version of it within it. So there's so much available. And the School of Shamanic Womancraft is schoolofshamanicwomancraft.com. And my website's janehardwickecollings.com. And as you mentioned before, I actually share a lot of information on Instagram. So that'd be a place to have a little look at what I'm on about. And yeah, the other thing that I'm very involved in as a co-founder is Harwicke Health, which is the charity wing of the School of Shamanic Womancraft, which was created back before COVID. And the mission for Harwicke Health is to basically work with birth trauma, to eradicate it, to heal it, and to prevent it. And we have lots of ways that we have been and plan to do. And one of our biggest mission is we want to build a hospital that will truly be mother and baby centric, a hospital that will have gentle practices. And our plan for that is, obviously that's a really big plan, and we're hoping to do that and build that hospital up in the Northern Rivers. And hopefully, the thing that holds it back is money. And we know there's money. So for those who have the money and want to donate money to help the birthing services and therefore the future lives and the current lives of women and babies and their families in the Northern Rivers, then donating to Harwicke Health would be an amazing way to look and invest in the future, so that you could be part of the group of people who supported the creation of a hospital and that will have a birth centre, that will have birth on country services, helping Indigenous people in all the way they need, and home birth services, and looking after midwives and looking after the doctors. So everybody together on the one side, in the one team, co-creating the kind of maternity care service that we would want. And so that's what Harwicke Health's all about.
Yeah, that is amazing and so needed at the moment, especially in the current online affairs of birth.
So my focus is actually as a midwife in the old version of the word, so from womb to tomb. So my work is on the whole life, seasons and rites of passage and the menstrual cycle, and connecting to the earth and the moon and each other. So lots to choose from if you want to go deeper.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that, Jane. And thank you for all the work you do. It's really so wonderful. And so many people, even guests that I've spoken to on the podcast, just admire you so much and have learnt so much from you. So thank you. And
thank you.
Everyone, all of those links will be in the show notes. Thank you, Jane.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining me today. If this ignited a flame for you, please share, follow the show, and leave a review. The more support and subscriptions the show gets, the more powerful and credentialed guests I can bring on to deepen these conversations. I appreciate you being here, and I will see you next week.